The Seattle Kraken, coming off of what Lane Lambert said is their best game, looking to get back into the win column at Climate Pledge Arena.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Seattle hockey fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, of course, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Erica Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken, and we didn't have an episode Monday, but I knew we were going to double dip here on Tuesday, and that's because not only are the Seattle Kraken in town, they have a game at Climate Pledge Arena, but we have the first full practice for your Seattle Torrent at Kraken Community Iceplex, and I will be at both. So we will have a show later today with Ava Wood, where we are going to discuss the sights and sounds, first impressions from Seattle Torrent practice. I will then, before then, I will make my way to Climate Pledge Arena and get an update from Lane Lambert on Joey Daccord. In case you missed it, we talked about it on the last few episodes. Joey Daccord on injured reserve. When we look at the information sent out by the team ahead of tonight's game against Columbus, we see that he is listed alongside, of course, Jared McCann and Freddie Gaudreau. It's an upper body injury for Gaudreau and Daccord, and a lower body for Jared McCann. 11 games missed for Gaudreau, 10 games missed for McCann, and now 2 games for Joey Daccord. Because he's on injured reserve, we're not expecting to see him in tonight's lineup. So that would be Matt Murray and Philipp Grubauer. We'll talk about numbers wise, who perhaps is the choice in nets. But before we continue on, I want to let you know today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can head over to FanDuel.com, download the app, and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Okay, and I've said this before, goaltending. If you listen to the show, if you're an everydayer, an OGer in particular, A1, day one, however you want to say it, you know that I've had concerns about goaltending. We started the inaugural season with what was touted as one of the best goalie tandems in the NHL. Vezina finalist Philipp Grubauer, Chris Driedger, and things fell apart pretty much immediately. And so when I talk about are the goaltenders being overworked, and someone pointed this out, like, it's never all of the goaltenders being overworked. It's usually just the one. So yes, I could have said goaltender, but I was thinking more holistically in franchise history, because although Joey Daccord is the most recent injury, a starter with an injury, perhaps because of being overworked. Again, going to try and find out more for you. I have some inklings. I've heard some murmurs, but I'd rather get more concrete information for you. This is unfortunately something that we've seen time and time again. And I've been keeping you up to date with my, auntie vibes, as I sometimes like to say, my eye test. Again, things that I've been hearing that maybe weren't quite appropriate to report. They were kind of not complete information or information that I could verify yet. And I think here we are again. We don't know how long Joey Daccord is out. We haven't heard an update on what his injury actually is. The team was off yesterday. So today at morning skate, and then after the game will be the first time to hear from Lane Lambert. So that's where I'll be. I'll be, to keep eyes on social media for the Locked On Kraken social media, because I hope to have an update there. And Joe Dabney is going to help cut up some of that video. So we'll also have that. But I've been a little concerned. But the Seattle Kraken were able to get a win in their first game of the back-to-back, and then they fell to Dallas. And it was interesting because the guys felt that it was a really good game. And it really was a good game. If we look at the instant analysis from Allison Lukan in this game, Matt Murray gets his first quality start, both goaltenders, and we will talk about goaltending in the game, not just, my thoughts on goaltending. In the Dallas game, definitely a quality start on the side of Dallas. It just was the Seattle Kraken quite literally hit a wall. Allison Lukan, I think it was in the second intermission, maybe post-game after Dallas, what she was talking about is that you could see a line of differentiation when it came to where the Kraken shots kind of fell off of a cliff. And I thought it was great that she had that analysis. If you look at the shots on goal, 31 for the Seattle Kraken to 25 for Dallas. When we look at Allison Lukan's post-game analysis, 3.8 shot quality for the Kraken, 2.8 for Dallas. And then this is really, I think, what's telling here. Oops, I just lost it. Okay, here it goes. Casey DeSmith prevented 2.77 more goals than he should have based on the quality he faced. So the Seattle Kraken were not just getting more shots up, they were getting high quality shots up, which is something that we didn't see the other day, especially against San Jose. But they were doing that. It's just that the defense for Dallas was very good at keeping the Kraken away from the house. They did not allow them to have a net front presence at all. And if you look at, again, some of the heat mapping, and Allison Lukan went over this, the Dallas, I almost said Wings, the Dallas Stars, excuse me, my WNBA brain clicked on there for a minute. The Dallas Stars were just the better team when it came to eliminating offensive opportunities for their opponent. And so I'm going to take you over to Natural Stat Trick. It took me a little minute. So if you see me fidgeting, for those watching on video, just bear with me here. But I want to show you this because, again, that line of delineation was so obvious. The graphic that Allison had, I think, showed it a little bit better, but I still want to show you here. All right, here we go. So what we see here is the Seattle Kraken, the attempts, nothing in those high danger areas. Now, the shot quality was good. So that the Kraken were getting good looks, but you can see nothing in the house area, nothing in that, in that slot area here, comparative to this big old heat map for Dallas. And let me just make sure we're seeing on all attempts. So that was 5-on-5. All attempts, you see there's just, they get stood up right there by the hash marks, just at and above the hash marks, the Seattle Kraken. They could not get deeper into the zone. And so for me, that means they just have to be a little bit more crafty. I mean, you get a great goaltender, yes, and that was a part of the story with DeSmith. I just talked to you about that with that stat. But it was also that Dallas was pushing them up into the offensive zone. And so what we need to see from Seattle is, how do they get the puck deep into the zone, right? Pucks in deep is something we hear in hockey all the time, but it's not just about that, but then it's pushing that defense down with them so that they can maintain. And that's the thing, you have to maintain possession and then get that puck from below the goal line, right behind the goal, take away the eyes of the goaltender, make sure they're moving laterally or have their head on a swivel, but also be able to quickly and accurately get shots to that home, that home area, and be able to the house, I should say, and be able to, whether it's one-timers, quick, nifty passes, tic-tac-toe, we need to see more of that. And it's stuff that we've seen the Kraken do before. But again, sometimes you get goalied. Sometimes you just go up against an opponent that they had your number. And Lane Lambert liked a lot of what he saw in this game. And so let's hear what he had to say, because it's a loss, sure. And it's just one of those that you take because the other team, they just they played the better game, but nothing to be worried about. No bad habits that were seeping in. But here's Lane Lambert. He did say one thing, though, that I'm not sure I agreed with, which we'll talk about coming up. But let's hear Lambert to close out the first portion of today's episode. And then in the second segment, we'll talk a little bit more about Mason Marchment and some other things as they pertain to Columbus.
That was a good hockey game for us. We probably win that game 9 times out of 10. Tonight wasn't the night. Their goaltender played very well. I thought everybody on our team made an impact for the most part, and I thought we had enough chances to win the hockey game. Our compete level was high. We played good.
What do you think of Matt Murray's game?
Yeah, he played good. He made some big saves, at the right times. It's good on the penalty kill in the third period. Just a hockey game we could have won, and we didn't. And, you're going to have a few of those. You've got to find a way to bounce back. But there's no question that was one of our better games of the year.
Is there anything that you noticed, whether it was what the Stars were doing or what your guys were doing, were making it hard to kind of get inside, get to those dangerous areas in front of their goal?
Yeah, well, we had enough chances. I thought we could have shot the puck a couple of times. I thought we deferred. Even towards the end, we had a couple of looks at potentially the slot, and we looked to pass and overpass. But, they blocked some shots. We had a lot of attempts, and, it's one of those nights.
Lane, I know you want to always win games, but the fact that you guys are having a lot of close games, that is sort of what you're hoping for. Obviously, you like to win them, but tonight was one of those that you were never out of this game.
No, we don't expect to be out of hockey games, So we expect to be in close games. We expect to be games like that. And again, we showed our compete level right to the very end, and just really is truly unfortunate for our players that they didn't get rewarded for it.
How would you assess Mason Marchment's game?
I thought he was really good. Thought he was outstanding tonight. Thought he was a horse out there and physical. He had plenty of opportunities to score, which would have been really nice for a number of reasons. But I thought that was his best game of the year.
All right, so you heard Lane Lambert talk a little bit about Mason Marchment there. Of course, this was his homecoming to Dallas. He was acquired from Dallas by Seattle. I think that probably his best game, one of the better games for Seattle, but I still think we need to see more from him and, of course, the team moving forward. But coming up, we'll talk about what we need to know against Columbus, and then again, some details of what I know and what you can expect from the show later today as the Seattle Torrent hit Kraken Community Iceplex for their first full practice, all their national team players back from the rivalry series, and Locked on Kraken will be on hand for that. We'll get into that as we continue on with today's episode of Locked on Kraken. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We know the NBA is in full swing, as is, of course, the NHL, the NFL, college basketball, and so much more. And there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. Even if you miss the start of a game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making a late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we are back here, Locked on Kraken. Your host, Erica Ayala, accredited media member for Milano Cortina. This is, of course, a part of the Locked on Podcast Network. And I've said this before, but I want to make sure you know that we want to thank you for making Locked on Kraken your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked on the #1 sports podcast network in in the country. And so, we have a lot of shows, we do a lot of great work here, and we're so grateful that you are along for the ride. And what that looks like for the Kraken is that they will take on the Columbus Blue Jackets tonight. This is a game where the Kraken are coming back home. They've played pretty well at home. 4-1-2 at home, 3-3-2 on the road for the Kraken. The Columbus Blue Jackets are 4-4-0 on the road. We see that overall 7-7-0, 14 points on the season for Columbus, 7-4-4 for your Seattle Kraken. And this is a Kraken team that, yes, we're seeing some results when it comes to the standings. That being said, it's still very early. We don't know what's going on with Joey Daccord. We're expecting to hear some news today, but they're hanging on to that number 3 spot. 7 wins in a row for Anaheim. Come on, man. We got to compete with that. Then Vegas, also with 18 points at 600 in the win percentage. That's the same win percentage as the Seattle Kraken right now. So on the one hand, you like how the team has been able to really scrap some points, get some wins. On the other hand, there are just some things that they have to do better at as the season progresses and continues. There are no indications now that they're going to get stagnant, stuck in the mud, or even regress. We've certainly seen seasons like that before. Lane Lambert seems to have a really good handle on the discipline, the attitude of the team, and I do think that's making a difference. That being said, some of the things that I've been saying have been organizational issues, and things that are more so coming from the front office are those starting to play out. And so you think about what Lane Lambert said about Mason Marchment. I'd need to watch this Dallas game again. I was, kind of running different errands and things of that while keeping eyes on this game. But what I do know is that if we look at the game score, Mason Marchment was middle of the pack in this game. First, you had Vince Dunn, Larson, Schwartz, Beniers, Kakko, Evans, Tolvanen, Myers, and then Marchment. Now, this is better than what we saw in the St. Louis game. The Seattle Kraken were able to get the win there. But Mason Marchment, for me, needs to perform a little bit better in these games. I know it was a pretty good big game for him playing against his former team. When you look at some of the areas where he was above average, his defense in particular was above average, his individual offense above average. So, those are things that I think Lane is seeing and where he's progressing and where he's starting to get his stride. But his best game perhaps is still not at the level that I was expecting, given what we need. Net front presence. Again, Dallas took that away, and perhaps because they know Marchment's tendencies in particular, they took that away. But we need to see more of that from Mason Marchment. Jaden Schwartz continues to be one of the top players. In fact, he and Eberle are leading the pack when it comes to scoring. Eberle, not the best game as far as game score. Vince Dunn had a solid game here. We continue to see Eeli Tolvanen really fight and jockey to be a part of this offense, and we're going to need him to do that, because Schwartz and Eberle, if you take that away, what are we seeing? Beniers, he's really the setup guy there. I know a lot of people are like, he's only got 2 goals. Listen, Matty Beniers is not going to be, in my opinion, I don't know if I've explicitly said this before, he's not going to be our goal guy. He's not going to be our finesse player. I just don't see it in the cards. And I still think that he can be one of our better players. A lot of people wondering why we're not seeing more from Shane Wright. I'll tell you, this Dallas game, in just a snapshot, not a full, timeline picture, not the best game to make that argument. He was dead last in game score. And I do think that there's a conversation that needs to be had about Shane Wright and what his role is, how he fits in. Another thing worth mentioning is Berkeley Catton, also second to last on game score in this Dallas game, but he has exhausted his 10 games. So whether he stays with the NHL or not, this will count as his first NHL season. So there you go. I don't exactly know what's going on there. It's hard though, because we're comparing it to Shane Wright, which I think was a different scenario. It's obviously a different player, but it was also different personnel. So, what that's going to look like moving forward, who's to say? When it comes to this game against Columbus, a few things that I'm looking for here is for the Seattle Kraken to continue to force net front presence, be a little bit more savvy and creative, getting the defense moving when it comes to the offensive zone. And, I want to see if they can start off this game strong here. We look at when the Kraken are leading after the first period, they are just 1-0. So it's only happened the one time. When they're trailing, they're 1-4-4. But this Columbus team is 4-0 when leading after the first period, but they are 0-4-0 when trailing after the second period. The Seattle Kraken are 6-0 when they are leading after the second period. So, those are some things that I'm going to be looking at when it comes to this game. But as I said, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Seattle Torrent, who will hit the ice for their first full day of training camp. That's because, of course, there was the rivalry series. So players like Hilary Knight, Kayla Barnes were away from the team, but full training camp, and we'll get to hear from the players at Kraken Community Iceplex for the first time. We'll get into that on today's episode of Locked on Kraken, and then we'll have an additional episode where Ava Wood from 365 Hockey Girl and I will talk about what we saw on the ice. Today's episode of Locked on Kraken brought to you by our new friends at Drip Drop. Now listen, when I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, mood, even my skin. That's why Drip Drop, it's a doctor-developed hydration that keeps you running at full power, no matter what your day looks like. Going for a walk, getting after it on the court, perhaps, or the ice. Or, maybe you just have a busy day of podcasting like I do, making sure you're staying hydrated. Drip Drop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half of the sugar of leading brands using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. Now, you can use it as part of your daily routine. You mix a pack in the morning, before gym, or even to get over your midday slump. It tastes amazing. You can pick from so many different flavors, and it can be a secret weapon for staying sharp and energized through long days. Hydration has become non-negotiable for many people. So Drip Drop helps you feel sharper, calmer, and honestly, just better overall. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard, and keep your body and mind performing at their best with Drip Drop. Closing out today's show, Seattle hockey fans talking about the Seattle Torrent. They will hit the ice at KCI for the first time with the full squad. So the training camp has already started. A lot of the players going through their different medicals and things of that nature. But of course, we have the rivalry series. The USA dominated the rivalry series. We're going to have a special conversation with Angelica Rodriguez on the Women's Hockey Report, but I will also post it here on Locked on Kraken to just talk about, even though the USA dominated, what did we learn from the two teams, and why perhaps are they maybe not as sharp as we've seen before? So make sure you look out for that on the Locked on NHL channel, I co-host the Women's Hockey Report with Rachel Donner usually, but Angelica joined us for a bonus episode. And, of course, Ava and I will have another episode today after the Seattle Torrent full practice, where we get into how the Seattle Torrent players competed in the rivalry series. One of those players being Hilary Knight, who had a hat trick in the 6-1 win over Canada in Game 2. Hilary Knight will be one of the players that we'll be able to speak to today. They're kind of in batches. So there's about 5 players every day that will be available to us as media to speak to and get to know, get their thoughts on training camp. Corrine Schroeder, Kayla Barnes, Jenna Bugliotti in that first group, basically the first 5 and our top draft pick for the Seattle Torrent. We'll talk today. And then we'll hear from the general manager, Megan Turner, as well as Coach O'Rourke on Thursday. Ava Wood from 365 Hockey Girl is going to be there with me today at practice. I'll be getting there after I go to morning skate. I'm about to head out for morning skate for the Seattle Kraken now, and we'll catch up there at KCI. So if you're at Kraken Community Iceplex, come say hi. Ava Wood and I will be boots on the ground, getting to know your Seattle Torrent. And once a week, Ava and I will connect on the Locked On Kraken podcast to talk all things Seattle Torrent and the PWHL. But if you want a more rounded approach to our women's hockey coverage, make sure you check out the Women's Hockey Report every Saturday morning on the Locked On NHL channel. Ava, Angelica, Joe Dabney, who's been on the show before, and of course, my co-host Rachel Donner. We're all the team that's going to get you ready also for the Olympics, the women's and men's tournament. But the majority of the conversation with that lineup, we're going to be talking about the women's tournament. I'll have you covered, of course, here at Locked On Kraken for the men's tournament, because I will be covering the men's tournament for Olympics.com. So I'll be writing, have pretty good access to the players that make the final squad. And so we'll talk all about that. But today starts a new era of hockey in Seattle, in the Pacific Northwest. Women's hockey. I know a lot of people also talking about how there's a trifecta here with, of course, Seattle Storm in basketball, the Seattle Reign in soccer, and now the Seattle Torrent for ice hockey. And I am so proud to be able to be part of that coverage team, the inaugural media corps. And if you have any questions, make sure you can email me at Locked On Kraken. We are going to be bringing back, I should say really reviving our subtext community. So if you want to text directly with me, it's on the screen here. But for those listening on our audio platforms, you can text 918-731-3154. That will give you a 14-day free trial. Now, if you are kind of like, I want to see what this is all about, don't worry, give it a try. I will let you know that we are launching a special insiders program and an all access program, an ad-free program. There's 2 different tiers for the Locked On Kraken show. That's going to launch in December, early December. I'll tell you more about that. But for our subtext community, you will have access to some of that. If you want all of the bells and whistles, again, I'll explain all of that. We're getting everything, all our duckies in a row. Some of the work that I'm doing while I'm here in Seattle is going to be for that bonus content level. It will include newsletters, emails, the subtext community, the direct text community, all kinds of things. And now that we have a little bit of a street team, as I like to say, we'll be able to deliver that a lot more consistently than we have in the past. So Seattle Torrent, Seattle Kraken, all things Seattle sports right here at Locked On Kraken, which of course the Kraken will still be the primary focus. I get comments every once in a while, oh, this is a Kraken show, this is an NHL show. Yes, you're correct. It is. And it's a Seattle sports show. And we're good neighbors here at Locked On Kraken. That's why we've squad casted, as I like to say, with the Seattle Mariners. We keep up with what's happening with the Washington Huskies. Of course, we're going to follow the Seattle Torrent. Those are our sisters over there in women's hockey. We're going to do it here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Plenty of space, plenty of room with a 5-day a week show to talk about it all, especially when it overlaps. That's our show for now. Again, we'll have a additional episode where we're talking about the Seattle Torrent, our takeaways from training camp with Ava Wood. A reminder, be kind to yourselves so you can extend that kindness to others. We hold fast, we stay true, and loud and proud we say, let's go Kraken on a game day, and let's go Seattle Torrent as you open up full training camp. Erica L. Ayala signing off. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.